I are back on ABC24 this week to talk about the race for district attorney. 3 Democrats running to unseat incumbent Amy Wyrick in that race, a very important position because we're talking, Otis, about the top prosecutor for Shelby County, and that's a big job, and it's an 8-year term, so a lot of reasons to ask some tough questions and help you get to know the candidates better. So our final candidate in this program today is Janika White. As we mentioned, she is one of the Democrats running to get her party's nomination and hopes to unseat Amy Wyrick, which leads me to my first question, Janika, and that is, and I've asked this of the others, you know, you guys you promised to be nice to each other and not talk badly about one another, but on the other hand, if I'm a Democrat trying to choose between the 3 of you, what is it about you that the other 2 don't possess that you think makes you the candidate to vote for if I'm a Democratic voter?
Yeah, I respect both of my opponents, Professor Mulroy, but that's exactly it. He's a professor and has not actually been practicing in the court that we're talking about. I'm the only candidate that is actually practicing right now in criminal court and is trying cases, and that's dealing with the very people that we're talking about in the criminal justice system. And again, my other opponent, you know, she has history in terms of being a prosecutor, but for the past year, she's been an arbitrator and a mediator. And right, like you just said, it's an 8-year term. So it's imperative that we get the right person. Experience is one thing, and having ideas from a theoretical perspective versus an actual practical one is also important, especially when we're talking about the lives of the people of our community.
Ms. White, there's the issue over releasing body cam footage comes up in this community from time to time. It actually came up Friday involving a shooting last weekend on Beale Street. This is an issue that the district attorney has to deal with whenever prosecutions are about to take place. Are you willing to tell the voters your policy on releasing body cam footage especially on high-profile cases that involve police officers?
Well, 2 things on that. It actually, I think, would have to be done more so on, we can establish policies, but more on a case-by-case basis, because, of course, we want to make sure and ensure transparency. That's very important, because in order for the citizens to trust the office, we must have transparency. But we also have to balance that with having a solid prosecution and a solid case. And sometimes if information is released too prematurely, it can end up affecting the outcome of the case and possibly sabotage the outcome of the case. And so the 2 have to be balanced and done on a case-by-case basis.
So that's not any differently than I think what Attorney General Wyrick, how she views that issue. So what would set you apart on that issue from her?
On that issue, I believe that the culture that I'm talking about changing in that office and the transparency that I intend to provide in that office in terms of providing information to citizens, educating citizens, and keeping them abreast of what's going on in the office on a regular basis, I believe we can restore the trust that's been lost there. And so when it does come to situations such as releasing of body cam, I believe that we'll have a different type of credibility and a different type of relationship with the citizens, such that we will be able to educate and explain again the balance that's necessary between making a decision of releasing body cam video and also making sure that we have a solid prosecution.
I wanted to ask you about Reverend Ken Whalum. He is a supporter of you. He's a frequent guest on our show, and he has made race an issue of this campaign, to be frank about it, saying that Steve Mulroy basically has an obligation to jump out of the race as a white male, that he doesn't represent the I don't know, understanding, I guess, and the diversity that's required in prosecuting some of these tough cases in Shelby County. What are your thoughts about Reverend Whalum doing that, number one, and do you think he has a point in terms of Steve Mulroy?
So 2 things. First, I will say, you know, of course, I'm very, very grateful for Reverend Whalum's support. The second thing that I would say is what I said early on in this race. We want to make sure that we have the best candidate, and everyone has a right to run. And you know, he's exercised that right. And so as it pertains to that, you know, I say, you know, let everyone run their race. Let the people of Shelby County hear us out and make a decision, and I'm fine with that. As to the second part, I do believe it is interesting, and that I found when I do hear the professor speak sometimes, he does often speak of the disparities that occur in the criminal justice system, as well as the lack of diversity in the office, which I agree with. Of about 110 prosecutors, I believe only about 13 are people of color. And so when you look at just the systemic issues that we have in the criminal justice system, and you talk about making systemic changes, it is interesting to hear my opponent begin to mouth off the systems that he believes makes him more qualified than Ms. Harris and myself. And so it just begs the question of, if diversity is really an issue and if diversity is a true concern, why not start with the top prosecutor, start at the top with that diversity? But instead, my opponent has simply continued to say how he believes he's more qualified because of the systems that he says that he intends to break.
But at the same time, he does have some pretty high-profile political people in this community who is supporting Ms. Mulroy, like Patrice Robinson, Ramesh Akbari, even the mayor, Mayor Lee Harris. How do you respond to that, and how do you plan to counteract that, since they say that you have the least amount of overall experience of the candidates?
And see, that's the thing, that what is experience? In actuality, I'm the most experienced in the courtroom. In actuality, I'm the most experienced in terms of right now experience. Laws change, the criminal justice system changes, people change, our issues change. And so you're talking about one person who hasn't practiced in years in terms of being in the courtroom, and one that I'm not sure whoever has. And so when you start talking about experience, I believe that I'm the most experienced in real time, the most relevant in real time, and the most likely to be able to, and the only one I believe who's able to really make the connections in the community that we need right now.
All right,
we
got to end it there. I'm sorry, Janika, but I will say you handled your cross-examination very well. I can tell you do have some experience in the courtroom. Thank you so much for being with us. We'll be back to wrap things up right after this.